Hello and welcome to Talking with Famous People. I'm host Eric, and to all the assembled GoToMeetingers, to the extent that you wish to participate more actively in this conversation, please do. Don't be afraid to turn on your camera or microphone. Uh, there's no reason why you all can't be equal participants in this conversation as well. So don't feel like you have to stay in the wings if you don't want to. At any rate, we are here today, and Chad Crandall has left and may or may not come back. I don't know. He said he was going to. I assume he's intending to. We're talking about disagreements, and I wanted to kind of set the table for the disagreement discussion by talking about an individual who has NI in the 7th slot and who has TI in the 4th slot, namely the ESFJ. My position is, and when you have conflicts with the ESFJ, that, well, I mean, when I talk about my ex-wife and my divorce and stuff, I still think that she made that conflict produce divorce because she didn't have any real means of adjudicating truth. Hello, Chad Crandall, and welcome back. We're already rolling. No problem. We're already rolling, and I set the table.
Oh, perfect. Could you catch me up?
Yeah, sure. Basically, I was saying, let's look at this issue of conflict from the perspective of my divorce, where my ESFJ ex-wife insisted that it was necessary that we get divorced and that, it wasn't working, a bunch of other things. My thinking about it of late has been, well, she has TI in the 4th slot. She's got NI in the 7th slot. And she's dominant FE. She's concerned about other people's feelings. And then her FI, which is strong, but is unconscious. I never could get what I consider to be a satisfactory explanation from her as to why this was ultimately the right decision to make, and why the truths she was presenting about our fundamental incompatibility ought to be prioritized over the inertia of staying in a relationship that we both were. That we had neither of us had any objective reason to say was inadequate. It met all the criteria we needed a relationship to meet,
Mm-hmm. So what I think the challenge in the conflict model that I'm referencing in this particular, as in part one we were talking about, is that adding value element. That stage was skipped in this. Obviously, this person went to closure, and without actually adding value to that. So the conflict actually didn't even close, really, because there was no value added. And so that's why they create this conflict model in the first place, is that because in order to close the conflict effectively, you have to add value so you can see the other person's perspective. I think that you can contribute, and I think what they're trying to get at here is that if you don't contribute both the logical primacy and both the ethical or the feeling-based or the emotional side of it, then you're not going to be able to close that conflict effectively. And it sounds like, from what you just told me, that she may have missed adding value to that particular thing to where you may have received it, and she may have just come out from a feeling standpoint, like maybe I just feel this is right, but there was no logical premise.
Yeah, I think that's a good assessment of things, actually. I think that's kind of right on the money. That because there, in my mind, I mean, you could make the argument that there were good logical reasons for us to get divorced, and I mean, one could make the argument that I'm a lot happier post-divorce, but my central position was, I don't think this is a good choice for you, ex-wife. I think you're making it a mistake. I think at the end of the day, you're succumbing to two realities. One being that you don't like adjusting to change, and I'm undergoing a lot of change because I quit drinking not that long ago. At the time, this was when I was talking about it, and I was undergoing a lot of change in that capacity because I was not drunk anymore, so I was able to actually attend to myself and think about how I wanted to be and what I wanted to do and stuff like that. So that was a struggle for her because I was changing, and she needed to adjust the way she behaved with me a little bit in order for us to get along better, And then the second thing is that she was attached to grass is greener syndrome. There's like an NI truth that's false because she's got in her 7th slot introverted intuition. So she thought, well, life's going to be better without the problems that Eric brings. But she was spending all of her time actually focusing on those problems and making them as real as possible in order to follow through on an NI truth that was guiding her, that was misleading her, probably. That's my theory.
What do you think role do you think SI played in that particular thing too? Do you think because she had experienced you in, say, years that you weren't at your best, that she had a particular model of who you were as a person?
Right. Her tool function was particularly ill suited to deal with the realities, right? Which are, okay, well, what can I expect from Eric? Well, let me look to how he behaved in the past. Well, the whole point he's making is that you can't presume those things anymore because I'm not drunk anymore. It used to be that if I went to go put on a hat, that was a bad sign because I was drunk, and I might go misuse the hat in some fashion. But now when I put on a hat, it's just because I want to put on a hat. Maybe I'm embarrassed of my baldness, or maybe I want to shade my eyes from the sun or something. It doesn't mean those extra things. And this was especially troublesome in stuff that she viewed as high risk, which was like basically making media, putting stuff out there for people to consume. In the past, it was an issue because, when you're drunk, you make poor media decisions, and you make poor Facebook posting decisions and stuff like that. So she would try to police that shit, and I was self-aware enough and self-loathing enough to understand that I needed policing. I wasn't in control of my faculties, really. So, those old habits died hard for her, and she said, don't start juggling the chainsaws again. You know what happens when you do that. People lose arms and stuff like that. And I said, well, they used to, but now I can actually successfully juggle chainsaws, and only occasionally will somebody lose maybe a hand or something. So, yeah.
She had this concept of an archetype of, say, this is who you are. I'm going to compare everything to that. Right. So everything you do, and it could be something as small as putting on a hat. Oh no, he's getting drunk again because he put on his hat. Yeah. Something's, and that's I think that can be one of the reasons. If you don't stretch and use SI's opposite or the polarity, any, and look at what could be instead of what you think may be, you're going to be challenged in that area as well.
Well, I made a video one time that talked about SFJ NTP relationships, and particularly ENTP ESFJ, and I said the thing is you got to earn their trust, and you have to train them. Basically, you have to train their SI associations so that they know from SI past experience how to correctly deal with you, and you can't suddenly say, remember all the rules that you learned the last 8 years about how to deal with me successfully, and all the time and energy and effort you put into figuring out how to manage Eric. Toss them all out the window. We're starting from scratch.
Right.
That's got to be a challenge for an SI tool function.
Right. That sounds like and that's the thing. I think if people don't have a firm understanding of MBTI, that's where the challenge comes in, because there's kind of this old saying once that way, always that way, and I don't think that's true for NTPs specifically. I've seen them change like that, and they don't return. It's like there's no coming back to this modeled behavior, whereas other types may return to another modeled behavior. And again, we're talking about a type that is a pretty rare type. I mean, you've got an intuitive thinking perceiver, which is obviously not something you can make a generalization like once that way, always that way type of connotation to the person, who they are. And if you don't know MBTI that well, that's going to be an area that you could overlook and a mistake that you can make without having that knowledge.
I do think that people's type manifests differently as they learn about Jungian cognitive functions in general, and they start to understand their own behavior through this model. It permits you to be non-defensive about shortcomings. That's my experience with it. It's like I can say, okay, it's true, I am bad at this, and this is why, and here's how I can make it cause me fewer problems. And I think that's to sort of tie back to one of our earlier videos. That's kind of the key issue about empowering your weaker functions, is to the extent that you want to structure things so that they cause you fewer problems if they're causing you problems. Right. If you feel limited in that I think there are tools available there that I'm not maximizing the utility of, that's another good reason. But if you're just saying, I need to improve my weaker functions because they're my weaker functions, then to me, you may actually have a weaker function that's working just fine for you right now, and it'll probably develop naturally. it's really a matter of what's causing you problems.
Yeah, I think that's a really fair assessment. I'll tell you, when I had a conflict with a particular employee in the past, naturally, again, I'm seeking closure as fast as possible. My natural response was, let's solve the problem here and now. Whereas I approached it in what I felt was the right setting, but my ESTP, he was another employee. He said, I don't think you approached that situation right. And I said, well, what do you mean? What's the issue? He's like, you should have taken this particular person who's an INFP, you should have changed the environment. You shouldn't have addressed the issue right then and there. And again, this is what results into creating space, change location. He's like, instead you put this person in a position to where you're not creating space and change of environment, you created a problem. He's like, it could have been handled more professionally. And I'm like, well, I guess you're right. I mean, looking at it, I was pretty frustrated at the time. Obviously, it was right after this conflict. And looking back at it, and I'm saying, okay, I didn't accommodate this particular person's feeling. And again, you recognize that this causes internal conflict when you as a leader are not fulfilling this particular thing for your team. And again, this is one of the areas, like I said, I had to work on this feeling function and go, okay, I need to start focusing on this function. So it was causing me problems, not addressing what particular staff was needing and wanting based on who they are as a person. And I think you're 100% correct. It's not like, oh, I need to target sensing because it's my tertiary and I'm only 25 years old or whatever, and that's where I think I don't think it's you follow that order. You just do what go ahead.
I want to mention something that before I forget it, there's something that I noted in a conversation yesterday with an ISTP, and he was describing how he always makes a big list before he goes to the supermarket to make sure he gets everything he needs to get. But then when he goes to the supermarket, he gets the things on the list, but that doesn't constitute the conclusion of the shopping trip. Rather, he then has to go through the aisles and make sure he actually has everything he needs and didn't forget to put something on the list. Now, to me, that is an example of somebody with fifth function TE doing a TE thing sort of instinctually, unconsciously, just kind of like making a list, and then getting there and relying on his conscious functions to misunderstand the purpose of the list, right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I would say that's as we were talking earlier about the unconscious shadow side, the fifth function. I think it's the same way when it comes to TE or my use of TI. It's this unconscious thing. I may be structuring something and ordering something. This is the way that I think it needs to be regulated, or the rules or procedures that need to be laid down for this particular thing. But then forget the very logical premise of why that needs to be that way.
Right.
And you're like, wait, what am I doing? Why am I regulating something that doesn't need to be regulated?
And that's the thing. We each have our own tree forest problem, right? And every type is going to have that. For me, I'm going to forget that, at the end of the day, I'm supposed to be proving something's wrong or fails or for some reason besides just like, yay, destruction!
Blow it all up.
Right. I'm supposed to be doing it for some purpose. So I have to remember that. I have to pull back from the trees, which are destroying this particular thing, this idea, and try to remember I have to reframe it. I have to frame it in my thinking in terms of a larger understanding. Why does it matter this idea is wrong? Well, if it depends. If it's like a government thing, it matters because it's used to justify coercive techniques that are causing unjustified violence, or whatever my reasoning is, and stuff like that. But that's the important thing for me, is to make it relevant in the real world to people, because my instinct is to go TI and TE and sixths is really a thing I bust out in practical situations. Like when I got to yell at kids in the classroom and when I'm coaching debate and I got to bust their chops and I act like a TE person. You go get that thing, you put it over there, you do this, blah, 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 right? Like it's a set of specific instructions. It happens, it sort of erupts when my TI structured approach, which is minimize any linkage that requires me to give you instructions. To give you instructions about how to decide what instructions you receive. I want to try to remove myself from that process as much as possible. And that breaks down, as it inevitably does, because it relies on a certain amount of individual enthusiastic participation, right? Then I just go default into TE. But it's not something that I utilize in the way that an ISTP would, where I probably don't have a list. I almost never do when I go to the supermarket. I go to the supermarket with thought like, don't forget You got to get paper towels and toilet paper at least, and then whatever else you get or don't get is fine. But don't forget those two fucking things, Eric. And then half time I'll forget them. You know, so and I still won't write it down because I'm an idiot. I don't know.
Yeah, you know, for me, you know, when it comes to my grocery shopping, it's a little different because I buy the same thing every single time, and if I forget, then I'm just an idiot because it's the same thing very routine oriented when it comes to my nutrition. And so I'm not going to make a list because I don't need to. I do the same. I walk the same pattern, very much like an SI person would. It's totally unconscious, you know. Like I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to walk the same pattern, grab everything I did, and that's it. You know, for me, I don't really make a list when it comes to that, but I make a list every day when it comes to work-related tasks. Every day. You know,
So
what do I need to accomplish?
So then obviously the appeal of this conflict resolution model to you is going to be, in part, its algorithmic nature, that it gives you a specific set of steps to take to resolve a conflict, and it defines the steps vaguely enough that allows you to put plenty of your own intuitive sense of how that step ought to be manifest in any given situation. I mean, I think it would be a very effective tool for a marriage counselor to use. I wish my marriage counselor had mentioned this model to me. Then we could have had a framing in which we could discuss the process, which I think is always the most important thing in resolving any conflict. Let's set the terms of the process of conflict resolution first. As an NTP, I always want to do that and try to do that with my ex-wife unsuccessfully. I'd say, okay, ex-wife, Candace, you've given me this, you've described a problem here. You've said, Eric, I'm upset because it's always something Eric did. It's not, I'm upset because of my own feelings. It's always something Eric did, right? So I'm upset because Eric did this, and I need Eric to be different in the following way. So I'd say, okay, now look, if you're gonna actually get me to commit to certain specific changes here, we need to know a couple of things. I need to know, first of all, what's going to satisfy you, so that this complaint is no longer something you complain about, but rather you go, oh, this is a way in which Eric is successfully attending to my needs. So there's a positive thing for you to harp on rather than a negative thing, right? And then number two, I need to know that once I attain this thing that you're looking to attain, by achieving the metric that you and I have agreed upon, that you aren't going to move the goalpost and suddenly have some new complaint that I have to do shit about, right? I want you to stay fixed. Stop breaking down. Stop requiring attention, you know? And that was just completely unacceptable to her, of course, because she doesn't actually want the problem solved. She wants to admire the problem.
Right. I think this is a really, really interesting topic, and I'm trying not to get off track here. It really brings up this whole thing I've studied very significantly. I did a lot of amount of research into, and it comes to mindset and psychological training in the sense of what do you focus on? Like, if you can only blame, and putting the blame and removing blame from yourself only disempowers you. If you're pinning it on someone else, you really can't control everything. A lot of people think, oh yeah, I'm going to control all these elements, I'm going to control this, and I'm going to control this, and I'm going to control that. And the problem with it is that what they don't realize is the only thing you're really in control of is yourself. And that's, I think the most disempowering words you can use or think of is when you get into this particular frame of reference of, hey, I have less, or I've lost, or I never. These are words that I call words of weakness. And it's putting you in a victim role. And the minute you assume a victim role, you're never going to really grow from an experience because, oh, it's someone else's fault. It's someone else did this and someone else did that. In reality, you've got to think, okay, what can you control right now? And they say, oh, you know, you're going to get upset, you're going to get mad, you're going to get whatever. And oh, that's life, don't worry about it. That's what life is like. And I'm starting to reframe my entire mindset of thinking, no, that's not life, that's your mind. That's what you are making it. It doesn't have to be that way. You know, you can own and take control of these particular circumstances, and you can take control of what you feel in reaction to that. And I think that's where personal development really kicks into gear, is when someone's pinning blame on someone else, you can only, you know, you can't really control that. You can take the blame and say, okay, you know, where could I have improved? Where could I have done better? But I don't think you should look at the experience and hold on to negativity, even though it's natural. And as far as observing myself in my youth, it was like I knew the right thing to do in a circumstance, and I say the right thing as in to grow, and somehow my conscious psyche wanted to hang on to the problem longer. This is an attachment syndrome. And I don't know if it's because it's identified with that particular syndrome, or if it's like, you know, you start attaching an identity, and as I said in my video recently, working in a chronic pain clinic, working with patients when they're almost done and they're almost completely chronic pain, it's almost completely gone, no medication, completely natural. It's like sabotage. uh-oh, now they're back to square. And this is not one case. This is many, many, many cases. It's attachment syndrome. And I think it's the same thing with conflict. They're in love with the conflict. They're in love with the pain. And they identify with the pain. And removing that attachment syndrome, I think, is really where the freedom comes in personal empowerment. And that empowerment shines through, and it actually radiates and helps others as well. And I think that's where people need to grow.
It's a locus of control issue, right? I mean, it's a locus of control issue. And people have this thing. Yeah?
Am I allowed to?
Yeah, of course, come on.
It's kind of messed up, but I just kind of thought it was cute because I didn't know what else to do with this wood.
Thanks, Delilah. Look what my daughter Delilah made me.
Very nice.
Come
very
over
nice.
here and say hi to everybody, Delilah. This is my daughter, Delilah. And
Hi, Delilah.
She just got back from work. She works at a place where they have paints and shit like that.
Furniture paint, like wood paint and stuff.
She's able to make fun things like that.
Look at the back.
It's like an Indian blanket. I feel like the Native Americans made this one.
I saw a zebra pattern on the back.
Oh,
Looks kind of like a zebra, the head.
I'm going Native American blanket. This is a first-run Navajo wood blanket. It's worth $500,000. Okay, that's what it's being sold for. So, thank you.
All right, let's put it on eBay.
I just didn't know what else to do at work, so I just preached that thing.
I mean, I think that's something that softens a person a lot as well and causes them to change their perspectives a bit. Is being a parent for me had a big impact on me, and it made me be less trolly in general. I think before I had a kid, I was just in general less attentive to caring about exhibiting care in the world, being cautious with people's feelings, being cautious with my own behavior, being cautious with my own body, being cautious about anything, you know. I got more cautious when I had my child, and it helped me to probably get in fewer conflicts.
Mm-hmm. I've always thought that was a big growth pattern for a lot of people. But again, the circumstance is placed on who beholds that circumstance. I think a lot of people don't grow from parenting. They stay who they are. Whereas I think as a personal growth enthusiast, you're like, this is a growth spurt. This is something I can change from. I think a lot of people don't really learn no matter what circumstance you put them in, whereas a lot of people, I think, do. There's other people who are like, I can take this experience and grow from it.
Well, I would imagine I was even substantially more distant from my own feelings prior to parenting than after parenting. And my daughter's basically an adult now. I understood my own feelings on a conscious level probably the only time I ever was when I was really little, and you know when I first got her home from the hospital or something. And then as she gets older, you realize that you're really feeling the pain and social difficulties of your daughter, and you start to understand your own. Because my daughter's an ENTP as well, so I saw her being too much, and having people tell her, "You're too much. Shut up, Jesus Christ," and all that kind of stuff. You know, I saw her struggle in middle school where she wanted to compete on social levels but wasn't capable of it because she had fairly weak FE, you know? To the third slide, it has to be developed. I saw her learn from those experiences and develop somewhat better FE in high school. And I was able to feel along with her every step of the way and understand, oh, that's what I went through. Oh. With poor SI also, ENTPs kind of forget shit all the time. Like, I don't really have a clear understanding until I construct it as to what my childhood events mean, or my adolescent events mean, or whatever. I have to make that reality, and I have to put it out publicly for it to be actualized in a sense that I take as real.
Yeah, and you know that's the whole angle I think that we're taking in any kind of, like, back to the conflict resolution thing model is, how can you relate to someone, or how can you put in her being an ENTP? Obviously, you know, you could understand more so than someone that was a different personality type. Obviously, you had a kind of an experience with that, and I think from a conflict resolution standpoint, it's focusing on, again, what side can they contribute to something that I may be missing, and I think it's starting with knowing what you don't know. You know, and if that's been one of the most freeing points for my life. I'm not a parent, but for me,
I'm sorry, Chick. Can I interrupt you for 1 second? Abraham,
absolutely.
Don't, because I think I'm going to be drawing this to a close and start uploading things probably after this one. Okay, so I'll probably go on again later this evening, but don't do that right now if you're still here. Okay. All right, sorry, go ahead. He was telling me he's going to go bring people in here, but I'm not quite ready to go. I've been here for like, I don't know, I've been doing it. Time flies when I'm doing this shit. It just flies, you know? But I think I've been doing it for about 4 or 5 hours. I don't know. Go ahead. What were you saying?
So like I was saying, I think I hear myself. Okay, anyway, so like I was saying, I think the biggest challenge is just, recognizing that you don't know everything. And that was the freeing point for me. I didn't have the parenting experience like you. I'm not a parent. But I recognized that what I don't know. And as I got older, I was kind of paranoid because I started feeling like I was getting dumber. Like, oh man, because when I was young, I had super high test scores. My academia was great. Like I was doing great in school. I was straight A student all through school. And I was like, okay, man, I'm awesome. I know everything. I'm smart. And then as I got older, I started getting paranoid. I'm really dumb. Like, what am I forgetting? Am I memory loss? Am I having Alzheimer's? What's the deal? And it's like, no, you're starting to realize what you don't know. And I used to hear my teachers and professors say, you get the sign of wisdom is you start learning what you don't know. And I'm going, wow, okay. And now at this point in my life, I have gained a little more of a perspective on how much I really don't know. And it's like, I think I said this in my latest video as well. It's like, you take on more of an approach of saying, wow, I used to be really insecure about my intelligence because I thought that was the merit, the sign of that you're a meritable person or not. You're a good person if you're intelligent or competent, and you're not if you're incompetent, and that's the way it was. And I think my perspective changed quite a bit when I started looking at ethics and started looking at the human side of things and started looking at what value you can contribute and the contribution you can have to people around you, which is a greater legacy to have than being a brilliant person. And that was me expanding and realizing, wow, I don't really know that much. It's really cool to be in this position because now I can hear you talk. I can hear whoever wants to talk to me talk. And I'm like, wow, that's an interesting perspective. I need to add that to my database. I need to learn more, and I'm interested in hearing other perspectives. And like we had that first conversation about education, and this is a topic I've always been really passionate about, is why our education system is the way it is and what needs to be done to fix it. I don't know what your objective is with knowing what needs to be done about education. Maybe it's a topic worth exploring, or it's something you really want to do about it. Me personally, there's a lot I want to do about it. And so hearing these perspectives obviously enlightens me more, and it's kind of removed the paranoia of, wow, I think I'm losing my memory or I'm losing my intelligence with time.
As far as education goes, I feel like I know perfectly what to do as an educator. Like I go into a class and I know how to get my debaters to learn stuff. So that I know. That I understand well. How to make societal changes in ways that account for people's change resistance and account for my own resistance to compromise solutions, because I'm not inclined towards, I see compromise as being wrong because accepting some wrongness because otherwise you'll be mad. Mm-hmm. And so it's like I see compromise as one side is saying let's treat the toddler nicely, the other side is saying let's kill the toddler, and so we compromise and just maim the toddler. Well, I don't like that idea. I think one side's correct and one side's incorrect in most such disputes. If it's that level, right? So if it's on certain core principle issues, and so for me, it's difficult for me to give you any direct feedback on practical ways to change the status quo, except to say my position on it is increased transparency and increased direct competition, because we want teachers in particular to understand their jobs differently. Right now, a public school teacher, they have lots of various paperworks and stuff they're supposed to complete, and all this extra work that's supposed to be a metric to evaluate teachers, when we don't need that. We can tell by talking to the students and the parents whether the teacher's any good or not. We can tell whether they're going to be good with their beginners or a lot of other things, right? And so if we had actual accountability methods that actually measured things in a concrete, decisive way, and allowed individuals to decisively say, I'm number 1, you're number 4, he's number 10. Then all of a sudden, people don't want to do shit that they're bad at naturally, and they find things that they're good at to fill into. And teachers understand what it means to teach, because they're not taught what it means to teach right now. They're taught what it means to execute a bunch of protocols that supposedly replace decision making in teaching, which they don't.
And I was talking about when we were talking about decision making earlier, and I had commented, or rather, I made a little message over there. This is something that they're not teaching in school. They're not teaching, obviously, conflict management. They're not teaching, I think, these fundamental life things that, you know, and I don't know what the absolute blame is. Like, in contrary to you, I think that you have this good understanding. I don't know if, are you an educator currently?
Yeah, I'm a debate coach. It's my business is I own a debate school.
Okay, yeah. Then, so yeah, you have a good firm understanding of how you should do that in that role. For me, it's like I got the objective, I got the strategy, I just need the tactic. You know, here's the tactic of what needs to be done.
Right, and,
You know,
and the
so-
tactic is set up the rules of the system such that people are compelled to figure out the tactic.
Mhm.
Because there is no specific tactic. I can't. What my old employer ran afoul of, and she was a person who was trying to structure a business as you usually are structured. Let's come up with some TE protocols and make it such that the people are plug and play. You can plug different people in. Anybody who's got this basic ability, you plug them in to do these set of tasks, and then when the whole system comes together, it starts to produce profit for according to the following reasons why people want to buy this thing or whatever it is. Okay, that's a normal business model of getting employees to function in coordination through TE methodologies to accomplish profitability. But the problem with doing it with debate coaching is the one thing I never could produce any protocols for, and just scoffed at the notion that it could possibly be produced protocols for, were the actual competition coaching classes. I produced 2 full years worth of curriculum for 2 different levels of survey classes that didn't involve directly coaching people in competition classes, because I can tell the teachers what to do, execute these protocols, and the reason that works just fine is because there's no actual metric for success. There's no real metric for success, except the kids have behaved themselves and gotten through the class and done the tasks, and you've executed these protocols. You filled out this thing on the evaluation form, like I said to do, and stuff like that. You know, because I was the director, and I had to make all these protocols and everything. I built the system, but I couldn't build any system for it, and wouldn't even try, and to explain to my employer that you can't replace coaches like that. It doesn't work like that, because what the coach is doing is they're constantly assessing, adjusting, and changing what they do to keep up with the Joneses, or to continue being better than the Joneses. And so, you know, what happened is she didn't believe me. I ended up getting fired from that job. She breached contract. It was a really shady set of affairs. And she tried to replace me and failed. It failed miserably. And the reason is because she didn't understand when it's real, when it doesn't matter how pretty a box you put around a last place finish, right? Doesn't matter how big of a nice bow you put on it. It's really hard to sell that poo in a box to a client if all you're producing is a bunch of poo in a box, right? They're not going to be convinced that it's worth something that they should have when they can see somebody else saying, well, inside our boxes there's something other than poo. There's trophies. They're going to say, well, look, objectively you guys are failing. I'm looking at my kids' results. They're clear. And they're not like results like a teacher gives, where I get to decide, oh, well, I'll just give you an A. Then everybody's happy. Parents don't complain, kid doesn't complain. If it's a public school and the A matters for something because of some concrete, like, utilitarian outcome, I'm going to go to college, then they don't give a fuck if they learn anything or not. They just want the A, because that's what they're there for. But in debate, if they don't give a fuck, then they shouldn't do anything. They should just sit there and just not bother us. And when you present them with this option, you are an autonomous being, you know. If you don't like this, just don't do it. I don't care. I'm not going to give you an F. If I had to give you a grade, you can pick it right now. I'll give it to you at the end of the quarter. I'll write it on a piece of paper and hand it to you. A+. I don't care what you do. Doesn't matter to me. Unless you care, in which case I care a lot. Then I want to help you. Then we're in the same army. And we're in the trenches together. And it matters. And it's real. So, you know, it's like that's the thing that needs to change. It needs to matter to everybody. It needs to matter to that teacher. Shit, I'm humiliated. The second semester in a row, I finished last place amongst all the teachers and actually getting things done. Then it matters. Public shaming. Shaming works beautifully to motivate people. But you can't actively shame them. Have the shaming occur naturally as a natural consequence of the system.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Let the person feel it themselves as opposed to trying to pin it on them.
Yeah.
I know that you were trying to wind up this call, so I don't want to make sure that...
I wasn't trying to hurry this call along at all. I was just saying I probably wanted to attend to the other half of things. If I don't get to the uploading and tagging and shit, and I get too long of a line of shit in front of me, it gets it starts to become daunting, you know. And I go,
Yeah, exactly.
oh my god, I totally don't want to do that.
Yeah, and since I started recording my videos in 1080p, 60 FPS, it has been daunting for one video upload. It's like an hour and a half to 2 hours of uploading, and it's for a 10-minute segment. And I'm just like,
do you do any editing at all with like Premiere Pro or something?
I don't.
You don't?
I wish I really had the patience for it. I really don't. I tried, and I'm just A, not good at it, and B, I'm terrible at it, and C, I just don't like doing things I suck.
It's not a good cost benefit analysis, right? It takes a lot of time. You could make 2 or 3 more videos in the time it takes you to edit something in Premiere Pro. But I like to do so because just because I'm 7 first, right? Which means I'm actually, the achievement thing is in last place in my Enneagram. And most of all, what I want to do is play. And sometimes I'm like, ooh, I want to edit a video that's going to be fun like this, you know? And then I just do it. So that's how come I learned how to use Premiere Pro. But I'll tell you this, if you make a longish video and you try to encode it in 1080, it can take, I had this one video where I had a still photo that was moving across the screen all the way across, and it was like 20 minutes long or something. It took literally like 12 hours to encode the fucking thing. So, and then it came out with a red box around the image. And I was like, fuck you, Premiere Pro! You wasted all this time of mine, you know? I just published it anyway.
Wow. Yeah, that's why I don't do it. I don't know much about it, and it's a pain, and it's not worth it, and it actually drains me. It's one of those things that drains me, and it's like, and I was like, you know what, I could pay to outsource it and have someone else edit it, but why go through that? Just, you know, let's keep it raw.
Do another take. You know, that's what I've learned to do. I used to do only all one take unedited, and then I was doing serious editing if I felt like for fun or whatever. But now I try to do a second take if I start off bad at least. I don't know. Do you have notes going into them?
Sometimes, not often. Most of the time, I ad-lib everything.
Right.
Impromptu. Yeah, just have an idea. Here's what it is. Here's what I'm going to talk about. Let's go. Hit the record.
And it is absolutely a mistake to think that ENTJs can't improvise well. Kunkel, I've discovered this with Kunkel. He's funny. First of all, ENTJs can be quite funny. They're not these cold fish that people portray them to be as being. And number 2, he's quick on his feet, and he can dance with me. So it's like if I start riffing on an idea, he can play along and dance with me. You know, it's not a lot. There's very few types who naturally are willing to even go there with the improvisational stuff. A lot of people are very against it, and if you have any, like in the 4th slot, it's your worst nightmare is to be told, do something and you'll figure it out as you go. They hate that. You know, like,
I learned that. I have a lot of ISTJs that I've employed, and I've told them the same thing. Yeah, you'll figure it out. You'll get it. They're like, no, I gotta have the protocol. Give me the protocol.
Right.
And for me, I think SE and INI are the impromptu. You know, let's just do it.
Right.
And I'm always that. I find ways to impromptu or ad-lib whatever I can and have some fun in the moment, you know. And I found myself in a particular hospital room last night, and I was just making everybody laugh. I was making the nurses laugh, just doing everything impromptu. I took the gloves, threw them on, and act like I was going to be doing the work. Pushed the X-ray machine around.
A little physical clowning.
I was just having I was totally I was SEing all over the place. It was pretty fun. You know, got to have my moments, but.
Well, I've often said, and I believe it to be the case, my biggest payoff in life is when people are laughing honestly and deep, like a big gut laugh at some joke I made. To me, that's I've achieved the pinnacle of that moment, right? And I like having Nandi here on mic because she laughs beautifully at my jokes. You know, it's like I notice, okay. I sort of cue on different people's behaviors and use those to determine how funny something was. Like, oh, I never make that person laugh, and even he laughed on this joke. That joke must have been really good. But other people, I go, okay, well, that person's easy to make laugh, so I don't necessarily think the joke was particularly good if I made that person laugh. But I can also distinguish between types of laughs. It's like dogs have different kind of barks, you know. Right. So, while FE doesn't get super developed in ENTPs, and it gets more developed later on, I think I'm developing it better now, but it does. I think it finds its little narrow field. For me, it was humor. I think for a lot of ENTPs, it probably is humor, but for others, it might be something like making sure, knowing when somebody's mad, or you know, that kind of thing, like basic protection things.
Right.
If I can just get this one little segment of FE down, I'll just operate right there and just try to ignore the rest of it.
You know, and I back to what we were saying earlier is, you know, when it comes to the editing videos or whatever, it's like you said, I look at things from a cost-benefit analysis. I found that, you know, I don't particularly enjoy doing those things. And, you know, and speaking of editing, I wanted to move on to a quick question I was going to ask you is, I heard, I think in one of your videos, you mentioned that you're a musician. Is that correct?
Yeah, I am.
Do you have any of that stuff on your channel? I haven't seen it. I don't know if you have another channel.
Yeah, no, it's all up there. I've got some. I think there's one of the things on the front page that says music playlists. There's a playlist in particular called Current Music Favorites, which is mostly the more recent stuff. Occasionally something that's older will stay on that list for a while, but I upload a lot of songs. I've got, I don't know exactly, I think I have 161 music videos up, if I remember correctly.
And they're all yours?
Almost all of them. Almost all of them.
I need to check that out. I'm interested.
But here's the other thing. If you were going to just check out one, I would say check out a recent collaboration I did with JC, who's a famous person who comes on the show, and she's a singer, and she informed me that she was a good classically trained singer. I didn't really know what to expect, but she was nice enough to sing one of my songs, and I mixed it over me playing the drums and the guitar and stuff. And so that might be a fun one to check out if you're going to check one out, and it's recent. It's just maybe 10 videos ago or something.
Okay, and I think I checked it out when you posted it. I think you had mentioned that it needed to be further edited or something. Oh yeah,
that was the first. That was the first mix. The second mix is now up, and the second mix still is. I'm not thrilled with it, but it's sound. I'm happy with it enough to call it done for now. You know,
right?
It's like I'm the reason I'm able to get so much stuff up is I'm not particularly perfectionistic about having it be just so. And I'm okay with putting up, like, here's the first mix, it's kind of sloppy, and here's the next mix, because that's how I enable my SE, basically. If I worry about shit like that, let my N and FE get together to say, are people going to like this? What is this going to make people think about me? Too much to dictate whether or not something goes up. If I'm trying to prevent bad impressions, that's a wrong way for me to go entirely, because it just makes me shut down. It makes me not be able to do things.
Yeah, I've dealt with a lot of perfectionism myself, and I've learned to, when I did my YouTube channel, it was the only thing at the time when I started it that actually I wasn't perfectionist about. I just recorded my videos, not high quality, didn't even use a good microphone. I just put everything up. That's the way it was. Obviously, since then, I've invested in better equipment, better camera, that kind of thing. I'm using my webcam right now, so it's not super high def or anything, but I am using this external microphone.
Ah, smart. You know, I got one of those that was supposed to plug into my phone, but it ended up causing me endless problems. But because the phone, it's because of my phone, though, not the mic. Regardless, I also am trying to improve. I did this because of you guys. I thought, okay, well, look, I'm going to show the ENTJs that I can do an occasional sensible basic thing to improve things around here, rather than just defiantly putting my middle fingers up at any reasonable natural thing one might do. This is an easy solution. I'm in this, and it's funny. I talked to somebody the other day. They're like, "Oh, I thought you had moved to a different place." I said, "No, I just hung up this thing behind me." And I was like, "Oh, what is it?" And I said, "Oh, it's a blanket." I said, "That's a blanket?" I'm like, "Yeah." Now the fan's on, so you can see it moving. But otherwise, they just people who are watching. I don't think they think a lot about how YouTube videos are actually made or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's always been an experiment for me too. It's like, okay, I'll try this. You know, I put up my white background now, and I've had people actually complain. They'd prefer to see the natural environment in which I live. And then other people are like, yeah, you know, that's more professional. So, you know, let's try it this way.
Your house is clean though, so
yeah,
there's not anything that's jarring to the eye behind you in either context probably. With me, if I don't have the backdrop up, and the way I used to have it up, you just see my big messy garage with all the shit in it, you know? And sometimes it's super messy and people are like, oh, I can't even stand to look. I used to pay no attention to the lighting either. I just have the fluorescence on, and it would just be this wash of barely visible white. And eventually I realized, okay, Eric, you know, it's time to grow up a little bit. You're a little rebellious. Well, I don't care about that stuff. It's fucking stupid. So just grow up and care. After all, these people are nice enough to pay attention to you. You might as well try to make the experience less painful for them.
And it was what's funny about my particular situation is the only thing that ever people commented on the background was every video I've had these swords up. Like, these swords have always been up. Nobody says anything about the swords. Everyone says something about the ironing board that I have over here that I don't have over there right now, but it's always like, hey, you need to put up your ironing board. I'm like, out of all things, you want to talk about my ironing board. Like, I have an idea. I'm working on something. I iron my shirts every morning. This is what I need to do. This is what I'm going to wear today. I iron it, so I use it quite a bit, and I put it over there, and I'm like, oh, I got a video idea. I'm going to do this real quick. And then I'll put it up. So I didn't think anybody would notice, you know, and everybody's like, hey, put up your ironing board. And I got so tired of hearing it. One person said it, and I was like, enough with the ironing board. I got it.
Enough with the... I had a channel nag. I had Metasoap. Longtime viewers may remember Metasoap, who was around, who apparently, from what I could tell, spent almost her whole day watching it and talking with famous people and nagging me about shit. She would say, she complained about the lighting, she complained about the sound, she complained about the background, she complained about all kinds of shit. And it was really good for me because it made me realize that until somebody complained about it, I didn't really think about it at all. Once somebody complained about it, my initial response was, oh, that shit doesn't matter at all. Fuck that shit. That stuff's dumb. And then my third response is, okay, well, actually, now that I'm thinking about it more, maybe I need to try to accommodate a bit, or, you know, I mean, it does not hurt me at all, and it's only in my interest to listen to people who are giving me honest feedback about the shit that bugs them about my YouTube channel.
Yeah. And I heard, I mean, I don't know the whole, I guess I don't know the whole situation. I guess I don't know if, like, there was, like, this whole thing I heard on my channel, and it kind of spread over to my channel, like, everyone knows what happened to Metasoap.
Really?
Whatever happened to Metasoap?
I made this one video entitled, it's a great title. It was, I come with a hammer in one hand and coffin nails in the other. Get in the box, Metasoap. She was being stubborn. She was being super stubborn. That is so crazy. That is so gratifying to hear that somehow that was like, that was like gossip or something. That makes me super happy. Super, super happy. I love that.
I had no idea that there was this history or anything, and then you mentioned Metasoap, and I had to look it up just now. Is this the same person that I heard this about? So I just now looked it up, and they're like, yes, everyone knows what happened between Eric and Metasoap. And I'm like, wow, this is like some Beverly Hills 90210 stuff. This is awesome.
She was being stubborn, and then she kept getting increasingly just trolly. Like, she'd come in and just spend the whole time saying, like, how I was fucking up and how I was failing and stuff like that. And the problem is, you know, you're messing with the wrong type if you want to play rhetorical troll battles kind of things, right? So she didn't really get anywhere with me, and plus she wouldn't turn on her mic and camera, but she wanted to argue with me only in the comments and shit. Meanwhile, I was putting up videos in response, and then she'd bitch and complain in the comments about how I didn't answer this point or that point. I'm like, turn on your fucking mic and camera then. But she never did, and eventually I said, okay, Metasoap, finally you succeeded. You have gotten under my skin. I'm going to stop responding to you now. And then she just disappeared after that. She was like, she put a final thing saying, like, after a couple days of me actually following through on that, she put a thing saying, fuck you, I'm leaving, basically. And I was like, okay, see you later, Metasoap.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I was like, oh wow, I didn't know this kind of thing can ripple over into my channel, you know. And I'm having a debate between Metasoap and some other person on my channel right now about, I don't know, some narcissism.
Oh, is Metasoap on your channel? Is she a commenter on your channel?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So she probably spends a lot of time on your channel, I'm guessing.
Well, I'm imagining that if she has the ability to comment and I guess troll your channel is what you're saying, then she probably spends a lot of time on YouTube in general. I mean...
All right, well, she doesn't anymore. I haven't seen from her in a long time. She switched identities briefly. She tried to be File Skies, but I'd catch her, and she tried to come back occasionally in some other identity. But I could always recognize her argumentation style, and she never could figure out why I could always figure out who she was. She always tried the same argumentation style.
Well, you know, it's like that saying, don't bullshit a bullshitter, don't debate a debate coach.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
Yeah, you can recognize the very nuances in someone's argumentative style versus someone else. I mean, obviously that's what you do as a profession.
Right. Well, the reason Metasoap and I had conflict is because she kept making new arguments and never responding to my points. So she'd say X. I'd say, not X because Y. And then she'd say Z. And I'd say, not Z because A. Now what about X? You said X and now Z. She'd say B, not C. Yeah. And I'd say, well, not C because D. And then she'd say E. I'd say, wait, hold on a second. X, Y, and C you already tried to establish, and I've disputed them, and you're just pretending as though that doesn't matter, right? Like, I can just make claims, you counter them, and I just move on to the next claim, and I never answer any claims that you make, Eric. That frustrates me. If you want to frustrate an ENTP, do that. Like challenge them on something, then they're going to give you a response. Ignore their response, ignore their challenges of your shit, and then challenge them on something else. And expect that to be okay. That will drive an ENTP insane. It's like, no, fuck you. You're making claims. You're throwing trash down upon my table. I'm pointing out that you've thrown trash on my table, and then you just throw another piece of trash and you don't throw away the first one. Concede that you're wrong on that one before we go on to your second point. And I'll prove that one wrong. You concede that's wrong, and then we'll go on to your third point. I'm not going to play, I can throw as much trash on your table as possible, Eric, until one piece of trash happens to give you some trouble. You know, clean up your trash before you leave.
Yeah, that's I can imagine that. It'd be interesting to do another video sometime talking about what frustrates each type. I think you did something like that a while ago. I'm not sure exactly what it was.
Well, it was the nightmare day. If you had a family member who can somehow coerce you into doing all the family activities as she dictates, what would that day look like?
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to do what frustrates each type, because I'm telling you, in conflict specifically, there's things that frustrate every type. You know, some types want to be heard, some types want to be identified, some types want to be, you know, and I've learned to manage my conflict style based on who I'm speaking with. And it helps to know, like, this particular person is exuding this particular trait of extroversion. How do I adapt and flex to that versus my normal TJ style of handling a conflict, which hasn't worked successfully always anyway. So.
Well, you know, at the ENTP perspective on the same topic, and we should each do it from our own perspective, is how to piss each type off. What behaviors to engage in to piss the people off, and you go like, you know, what frustrates you if you're this type? Yours is more of a solvency approach. Mine's more of a weapons approach, right?
Yeah. What's in the arsenal? How do you piss off each type?
I've heard the way to piss off an ENTJ is to tell them this is what they're doing wrong, and there's no way to fix it.
That's one of the ways. One of the things that irritates me the most in any debate is when someone is telling me how I'm feeling.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's really irritating. It's like and it's mainly done over text or any kind of commenting because they can't see my reaction.
Right.
They only assume that I'm feeling a certain way based on the way that I'm writing. They're like, oh wow, you're really emotional, Chad. You're really emotional.
Yeah, they're not addressing. The reason that annoys you so much is they're not addressing the arguments. They're trying to shift ground onto your motivations for making the arguments, as though that were the point in dispute. But it's not. Even if I were motivated by insecurity, as you say, commenter, as I get this shit too, you know, like you're just being insecure or whatever. Okay, well, let's say I am being insecure. It's not responsive to my point. So are you going to respond to my point, or you concede it? You got two choices here. Now you can now here's your bag of bullshit back. You got two choices.
And that actually goes back to what we were talking about earlier, just in the conflict thing, because it says, looking at the TJ conflict pair, it says, TJ's conflicts arise more often around the issue of authority than for other conflict pairs. And then it goes down, it says, they tend to strongly deny the emotional content in conflict, even though strong emotion does exist. And it's true for me. I always deny that that I have some kind of emotional response, and I usually feel it, but I'm in denial. Like there's a denial that you don't want to admit. And it goes, and I think this is this kind of an eruption with FI. It says their engagement can shift from easygoing and agreeable to intense and seemingly angry, all within the same situation. And it says this paradox could be the root of changeable intensity they exhibit in the emotion that can remain repressed for a time and then surpasses the critical threshold and then kind of just burst out, and that's so true for me, and then we come out as all extremely aggressive, whereas most of the time we're pretty easygoing. We don't like to fit, I don't like to battle things that are not even worth battling. It's like, I don't even want to waste my time. I'll concede, whatever, it doesn't matter to me.
The eight's a tricky thing, right? Eight is misunderstood.
Absolutely.
8 is misunderstood as like people who use 8 are just fucking assholes. But my perception on 8 is I don't want to use 8. I have learned in certain circumstances that that if I know if there's direct, if somebody's directly positioning themselves as my foe in one way or another, either intentionally or by staking out a position that constrains me in some way that I have to fight through, then I go in big eyes, and I've been told I'm very intimidating. But it's not my default position at all. My default position is we're playing, right? If you're fucking up my plane, then I start getting a little bit upset, right? but I don't like to use it. It's not something I feel good about when I'm done with that whole approach. Although I may feel good about the outcome, and I may feel as though the outcome were best for everybody involved, and that other people needed to be maneuvered through force of will rather than persuasion. And sometimes that happens, you know. But I think as we grow older, we utilize that approach more sparingly and understand why it's necessary for some individuals to have that approach, to take that stance of uncompromising certainty and force of will, but at the same time, it's critical that those individuals learn to use that responsibly, so that we don't just go around pushing people around all the time.
Right. And 8 being my dominant type, that's an issue that I used to deal with all throughout my youth until recently. I mean, last year, it's always been 8 my way through life, just 8, just pretty much challenging everything.
It works, right? That's the thing. It has efficacy. It has efficacy. People do get out of your way when you're running like a bull.
Right, and you straight just challenge everyone, everything you possibly can challenge, and at that given moment. And that's the key that, to me, was seemingly successful until it came to relationships. Sometimes viewpoints just need to be heard, you know? And I think that's the real challenge that we had as 8s, I think. And whereas Trey's a 3, it's like he has more of a tendency to want to win, whereas 8, I just want to challenge. And I'm driven and motivated by the challenge of it, whereas the 3 is achievement. I have to win to represent success or achievement. I have to win this conflict. Whereas for me, it's not about the win. It's about the challenge in itself, challenging even status quo as we talk about education. It doesn't have to be this way. Can it be improved? Can it be better? What can I change about it? And versus, say, social appearance or social stature.
That's going to bring this episode of Talking with Famous People to a close. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Thank you very, very much to Chad Crandall for visiting here today. And it's been a great pleasure talking with you. And we just covered a lot of topics here. I would suggest another possible thing to consider for next time if we have this conversation again. I'd be happy, of course, to participate from the other perspective if you want to make the videos and put them on your channel. That if you want to do that, that's fine. If not, that's fine too. My feelings won't be hurt. Regardless, what I was thinking was what each type feels they need to prove themselves at would be a good topic.
Absolutely.
Thanks for watching, and have a great day.